All right. Okay, there we go. Good evening, everyone. The meeting of the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority Board of Directors is now called to order at 6:31. Carolyn, you want to call the roll?
Director Kenneth.
Here.
Director Flaher.
Here.
Director Chapman.
Here.
Director Annable. Here. Director Alexander.
Here.
Director Potter is not currently present. Director Gill.
Here.
At this time, are there any members of the public that would like to have an opportunity to address the board on any item not on the agenda? Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone on Zoom?
If any of our Zoom participants would like to comment on the public comments, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you.
No? Okay, all right. And I don't know who's going to be doing the plethora of new staff introductions. All right. That is, I know, I'm like, okay, this will be fun. All right. You good, Mike?
First, I'd like to introduce you to our new open space aide, Annie. She comes from us with most recently worked at the Lab Tech for Fremont Water District and also worked at places such as YSI, USGS, and City of Morgan Hill. She has an MS in Environmental Studies from San Jose State University, as well as a BS in Environmental Studies from Sacramento State. Most importantly, Annie just celebrated her son's first birthday, and this position is her first step back into the workforce, and the flexible 28-hour-a-week shifts work great for her as a working mom. Next, we have Casey. She just recently graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Environmental Studies and a minor in Environmental Restoration in May of this year from San Jose State University. While going through school, she was and still is a nanny, as well as spent some time doing special projects at places like Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space. Amit studied environmental engineering at Gavilan College, and her most recent job was at Amazon as a delivery driver, where she also trained and supervised new drivers. In the past, she has worked as a ranch manager at a horse ranch with over 100 horses. She also has her own dog boarding and training business. Cliff has been with us for about 9 years now. He started off as a seasonal open space technician and moved his way up to an OST 1, a 2, and now has become the lead for our South County team. He's an excellent addition. He's studying welding in his spare time and is really interested in learning more about equipment operation and is an amazing team leader. And he also was backup lead while I was on maternity leave, and also while Andy was on maternity leave, I feel like, or paternity leave. We were both gone and Cliff had to step up and has already kind of played a role as a lead, and he's an excellent addition to our team.
My turn. So this is Jessica Gunther. She's a bachelor's in wildlife biology from Texas State University, San Marcos. She also attended Cal Poly Humboldt, which graduation program in natural resource and wildlife. She's worked as a biology science intern with National Parks and a conservation volunteer intern with Global Vision International. She currently is working with us and then also with the Los Gatos Bird Watching, where she assists on bird walks. And then Antonio Sanchez, Jr., he worked 2 years with the San Jose Conservation Corps, where he got promoted to crew lead. He's also worked there. He worked there as one of their many sawyers and is very skilled with chainsaws and table saws. He's also worked seasonal positions with Santa Clara County Parks, the City of Campbell, and Mid-Peninsula. Lucy. So Lucy Maria Marquez. She was promoted to the 8th position after completing her first season with OSA. She has a bachelor environmental studies and a minor in recreation and nature from San Jose State. She's worked with the city of San Jose and Emma Prush as a rec leader. She's currently working with us and then also working with county parks as a seasonal park interpreter, where she plans and leads bilingual public programs across multiple departments. And then Amrita Singh, she has a bachelor's of science, sustainable environmental design from UC Davis. She's worked as an urban farmer or at Farmscape and a grower propagator at our city forest through AmeriCorps. She was promoted to the 8th position after completing her first season with OSA as well. She's proficient in Punjabi and Hindi. And I have a really great story that she shared with me that I really loved. Is that handful of time visitors have told her how amazing it is to have someone they could speak with in their native language at Sierra Vista and to see someone that looks like them. And multiple times she's actually taken pictures with visitors, which I thought, I just love that story. So these additional staff have allowed us to cover all the opening shifts and most of our closing shifts, which then has allowed our full-time technicians to be focused in more of a mid shift. And then together they get to work on larger projects. Wherein before they would have to leave a project to go and close Sierra Vista or come in early to open and then not get that full 8 hours on a project site. So these additions are very important and helped us quite a bit. And then my last introduction is Steve. Steve Woodson, promoted recently to a lead position with the North County team. He comes to us via State Park in Mid-Pan, and I'll let him say the rest.
Hello, thank you, Andres. I'm sorry.
Is this working?
Yeah, so thank you, Andres, again. I'm a graduate from the West Valley College Park Management Program. Also got the degree to that as well. I got the certificate kind of early, so I ended up getting a job pretty early and ended up working about 10+ years in the park services. I'm also a United States Navy veteran. So before that, I came out here, tried to figure out what I was going to do, and yeah, I really love the parks. And what I love most about the OSA is just the community that you guys bring, not only to us here as employees, but also the community around us. And like I said, after 10+ years, I think I found my place. And yeah, I mean, I can go on and on about other stuff I've done, but
Really quick, I just want to jump in that Amit was able to join us from the field. She's our closer for tonight. So Amit, do you have anything you want to add? I gave a quick little introduction about kind of where you came from before you joined us. You could come up to the microphone if you have anything to add. Sorry to put the pressure on. We're just introducing you as our new aide, so kind of why you wanted to come to the OSA, what you've learned so far, how you're liking it here.
Okay, my name's Amit. I've been working here about a month and it's favorite job ever. I have always worked on farms, managed farms, worked in the outdoors with livestock, and always my goal to get into parks and conservationism. So happy to be here.
Thanks, Amit. It's nice for you to come.
Well, thank you. It's very nice to meet you and all. Is there anybody online? Just check, I just want to make sure. No, okay, because I looked at this like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have a whole group photo here, but. Anyway, okay, well, welcome, and we're really glad to have you and the answer to my question about, you know, the need to have more aides out there, probably with the increased demand is probably helpful. Good. Yeah, yeah, no, we want to be busy. Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Now we are on to approval of the minutes. There are a motion to approve. Everybody reading? We have a motion to approve the minutes moved by Director Kenneth and a second by Director Father. We take a vote.
1 second.
Second. I don't think that's correct.
Everybody.
Yeah. So good.
Okay, now I'm ready. Director Kenneth,
Yes.
Director Flaher,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Annabelle,
Yes.
Director Alexander,
Yes.
Director Potter,
Yes.
Director Gill.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, now we're on to approval of the consent items. Is there anybody that wants to pull any item from the consent calendar?
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a motion to approve
All second.
and second. Motion to approve consent. Moved by Director Potter with a second by Director Alexander.
Director Kenneth,
Yes.
Director Kenneth.
Director Flaher,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Annabelle,
Yes.
Director Alexander,
Yes.
Director Potter,
Yes.
Director Gill.
Yes.
All right. And that motion passes unanimously. Great. All right, now we are on to new business, which is review and approval of the Americans with Disability Act Transition Plan for the Open Space Authority. And this is Jennifer Hooper.
Righty. Hello. Yes, so good evening, directors. Thank you. I'm Jennifer Hooper here, and tonight we will be discussing the Americans with Disabilities Act Self-Evaluation and Transition Plan. So for tonight's agenda, we'll include a brief overview of the law that mandates the development of the plan, the planning process milestones and timeline, and the plan contents. We'll also review the community outreach and engagement that occurred as part of the planning process and how the authority intends to implement the plan over time if approved tonight by the board. So it is staff's recommendation to adopt the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan, again, as presented in tonight's board packet. So we are encouraged that the impact of the implementation of this plan will have toward the authority's commitments to justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, providing us a roadmap for increasing accessibility in open space and in connecting people to nature. I wanted to share briefly these disability statistics in the United States. Nearly 30% of our population is living with a disability, and you are more likely to develop a disability as you age. So in an aging population, it is a consideration. The Americans with Disabilities Act is one of the most comprehensive civil rights laws in the United States. One of the primary goals of the ADA is to ensure equal participation in public life for all Americans with disabilities. Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act requires that public agencies with a staff size of over 50 assess their public serving programs, activities, services, and communications for barriers to access. This is accomplished through a self-evaluation on policies, procedures, and practices that would affect the accessibilities of program services, activities, and communications of the public agency. Additionally, a public agency must survey public use facilities to identify physical barriers to accessing those spaces and develop a transition plan toward the removal of those physical barriers. A transition plan must identify responsible agency staff, including an ADA coordinator and staff who will be responsible for the implementation of the plan over time, and the plan must also be made available to the public. This is an overview of the planning process and the project timeline. So we kicked off last summer, summer of 2022. Over last winter, we completed the staff self-evaluation and those physical facility surveys. We held a meeting meeting with the Citizens Advisory Committee and conducted other community meetings and stakeholder outreach throughout the spring. In the summer, we released the draft plan, and here we are now bringing the final plan to the board for consideration of approval and adoption. And ongoing would be plan implementation and evaluating our progress. So for the self-evaluation portion of the plan, the self-evaluation portion is comprised of the recommendations that came out of the responses of staff to a questionnaire assessing the policies, practices, and procedures related to the work of the authority, including in the categories you see listed here. This comprehensive evaluation identified nearly 50 recommendations for actions that would improve accessibility of the programs, services, and activities offered by the Open Space Authority. So some examples of these recommendations include things like ensuring that all authority printed publications and notices inform readers that the publications are available in alternative formats if needed for persons with disabilities. Be ensuring that all departments have procedures in place regarding the evacuation of persons with disabilities during an emergency. Another example would be to develop an accessibility checklist or accessibility protocols used on all capital projects and assign a staff person to ensure compliance with this checklist. So taking action on those recommendations in the self-evaluation will involve coordination between the designated ADA coordinator, department managers, and staff across department. The plan identifies the Assistant General Manager of Administrative and Field Operations as the ADA coordinator, who will be responsible for ensuring progress is made toward the removal of these programmatic barriers in the most reasonable and accommodating manner consistent with the law, with support from department leads. Progress on these recommendations will be tracked and reported annually to the board. The transition plan portion of the plan presents the results of the physical assessments of the facilities, of the authority's public use facilities, as well as an implementation plan and proposed schedule for the modification of these authority-owned facilities, which I'll dig into in the next couple slides. But the results of the facilities access compliance surveys will guide the authority's planning and implementation of necessary facility modifications and physical barrier removal over time. The section of the plan summarizes the laws and regulations that apply to those public facilities and establishes scoring criteria for the degree based on the degree to which individual features within a facilities, such as parking lots, restrooms, sidewalks, common areas, trailheads, and other amenities deviate from the current rules and regulations and for the expected frequency of use of the feature. So the 5 facilities listed here, 33 Las Colinas Lane, our administrative headquarters, Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve, Rancho Cañada del Oro Open Space Preserve, Sierra Vista, and the Tilton Ranch Complex, were all evaluated by a certified access specialist or a CASP specialist. You'll notice Mayana Yakima Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve is not included because the preserve is under construction at the time the plan was in development. And then additionally, this preserve was permitted and built according to today's standards and regulations with Americans with Disabilities Act compliant features and amenities, including a parking area, restroom, interpretive trail, seating and picnic areas, and wayfinding interpretive signage. So a total of 232 individual physical barriers were identified across those 5 facilities. These individual barriers are compiled in the appendices, Appendix 3 of the plan. The cost for the modification of these barriers from non-compliance to compliance is estimated at approximately $2.7 million. This is a rough approximate figure. And so as tonight's the board report indicates, costs for barrier removal projects will be evaluated on a project by project basis, along with annual work plan budgeting. So the authority developed the following implementation criteria to develop the timeline for barrier removal assessment by facility, and these include safety. So prioritizing barrier removals that address safety for visitors with disabilities, geographic distribution, widely distributing the availability of accessible programs and facilities throughout the authority's jurisdiction. Good. Usage levels, so those prioritizing barrier removal at facilities that receive a high level of the visitor use and other sites of high public interest. Public feedback and requests, so prioritizing barrier removals that have been identified by interest by the public. And then project readiness, considering the cost, ease of implementation, general project readiness, that would leverage existing capital improvement or maintenance projects to make efficient, cost-effective use of the resources available for barrier removal. So by applying those implementation criteria, the authority is proposing the schedule you see here for assessing the mitigation of physical barriers. So there are efficiencies in evaluating and addressing barrier removal by preserve, but there may also be some projects that are addressed across all preserves at one time. So for example, the planning and construction of a capital project to address barrier removal at Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve is anticipated in the next 5 years. But in that time, we may also begin to address barriers at other preserves as well. So you'll see each of those column begins with the next year, and then assessing barriers by facility location over a span of 15 years will allow the authority to plan and budget for barrier mitigation work accordingly. So this slide demonstrates how the authority will plan to assess and implement interim and maintenance level barrier removal projects in the next 1 to 5 years, those first 2 lines in the table. And then in addition to some capital projects. The implementation of larger capital projects will require such funding and capacity considerations that their initiation may span a greater time period of up to 15 years, as shown here. So through the planning process, authority staff engaged the public through the following avenues, including through a project webpage, direct outreach to community advocates and stakeholders, and by attending community events and meetings. Staff presented project updates to the Silicon Valley Independent Living Center's Access and Functional Needs Work Group and attended the San Andreas Regional Center's Superhero Summer Festival, which is a run, walk, roll 5K event for all abilities. The authority in San Jose, the authority released a survey to understand community perceptions and priorities around accessibility in open space. The survey was released in our newsletter in July and by other partners, including Age Friendly Santa Clara County and the Central Coast State Council on Developmental Disabilities and the Silicon Valley Independent Living Center's e-news post. Staff additionally brought project updates to publicly noticed meetings of the Use and Management Committee and Citizens Advisory Committee. So here's a list of partners who were engaged as part of the project, some of whom I mentioned previously. And then the intention is that these relationships are ongoing through the implementation of the plan and beyond. And here's a summary of the feedback that we heard through surveys and interviews with community members with an interest in creating accessible and inclusive spaces. So we heard that transportation to and from preserves was an issue, including paratransit, requiring a physical address to drop off or requiring a certain distance from a bus stop, not being able to go beyond a certain distance. The availability of accessibility information on the authority's website, about preserves or about our programs, and then availability of accessibility information at preserves physically, the availability and expense of adaptive equipment that would allow for open space use. There was a recommendation about exceeding minimum dimensions and quantities, so a minimum number of accessible parking spaces or a minimum dimension on trail width or bathroom stall width, so exceeding those minimum dimensions or quantities. Maintaining outreach and communication with the community, including those advocates and stakeholders particularly interested in this issue. And then the representation of individuals with disabilities in our outreach, outreach materials and communications, and then staff training, so staff know how to respond to individuals with needs in open space. Here is these are some survey responses. There's some excerpts for the survey responses that we received. These are emphasizing the importance of building and maintaining relationships with the community as we implement the recommendations for programmatic improvement and physical barrier removal projects over time. So I'll read, for example, the third one there is going beyond standard ADA thresholds to an even more diverse series of physical and programmatic offerings to as wide a variety of disabilities as possible. Invite people with lived experiences to review. So immediate next steps would be for staff to build and maintain those relationships I mentioned previously. And then the plan also establishes the following roles that live with the Assistant General Manager of Administrative and Field Operations, Lee Rauscher, that of Official Responsible and ADA Coordinator. These roles have the ability to oversee the budget allocations toward plan implementation and determine where undue financial burden or unreasonable hardship exists that would impede programmatic or physical barrier removal as identified in the plan. And then an internal working group of department representatives will support this role. And then the plan also outlines 2 policies that may be drafted and brought to the board in the near term, both a grievance procedure and then notice of compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And then ongoing implementation over time, over the life of the plan would involve the meeting of an internal working group, which has already been formed and which participated in the development of this plan. To take actions within their departments toward programmatic recommendations and physical barrier removal identified in the plan. And then it is anticipated that this group would come together at least twice annually, once in the fall, winter, coinciding with the development of the fiscal year work plan, and again in the spring, summer to compile progress updates, which would be reported to the board on an annual basis. Thank you, and then open for any questions.
Thank you. One question, is there a timeline that you have to complete certain benchmarks or so that you're making progress? Are there any penalties involved if you're not making progress, or if there's any restriction?
No, not that I'm aware of. So as in the plan, we've identified the 15-year time horizon. That's not, there's no requirement. There's no requirement on that timeline.
Okay. So it's really kind of at your judgment that these are been identified and that you're going to see through and put your timeline and show progress.
Yes, yep, exactly. And then of course, in consideration of funding, funding and capacity over that time.
Right. And then my other question is, was there anything that I know you mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that it kind of anybody over 50 employees kind of that was the administrator doing this. There weren't any other complaints that were driven saying you're not ADA accessible, you're.
Yes, that's right. It was really that 50 staff mark hitting up against that.
That's a good thing, because I mean, we know businesses that one person on the list, like, I know her. But at times you'll get those complaints, right, that are driven by, not having it, and then you have a bit of a lawsuit, and it's very expensive. So this is much more, you're forward thinking rather than reactive thinking.
That's the case. Yes.
Right. Okay. Dr. Potter.
Thank you. I had one question about the process of grievance and resolution.
Yep.
Are you providing feedback to the person who initially submitted the grievance, say it's been resolved in this way?
Yes, so the grievance procedure itself, we have maybe like an informal procedure that we're doing now. So we have an ada@openspaceauthority.org email address. And so that's being routed to staff in order to respond to direct to leadership and beyond if needed. And then the kind of official board adopted grievance procedure would be developed at a future date and adopted by the board.
And does that get back to the person who actually submitted the grievance?
I'll make a note about including providing feedback. Sure. Yeah, understood.
Through the chair, real quick, if our directors could speak into their mics. We have a few participants who are having a hard time hearing.
Okay. Now Director Potter.
Thank you. I appreciate this presentation. Is the ADA coordinator, is that a new person or is that going to be added to additional duties?
That will be added to additional duties.
Okay. I'll get on. Hopefully with some additional stuff. I looked at the list of things like, what's an example of a typical barrier at the headquarters?
Sure. So we have things, and of course, so the California Building Code is updated.
This is we did a lot to remodel this space, so I was hoping we would be consistent with the ADA when we did that and got permits to do all this stuff.
That's right. At the time of those tenant improvements, they were consistent with the law. And then the most recent California Building Code updates were adopted in 2023.
Yeah, and I can jump in real quick. The building was built at code at that time, and we're under no obligation to require. We're not required to update our facilities every time the code is updated. So if we were to do a major renovation, we would be required to, or at one of our other facilities as well. However, I think it's good food for thought. For us to look at the things that were identified. Some of them are things minor. They're all fairly minor things, but some of them are things that may have been installed afterwards. Just allows us to, and they're logging for instance, so it allows us to see those things and many of them just check off.
Perfect. That's what I figured. I just thought I would ask because I wasn't sure what those were and if I was ever asked. What's an example of a large cap project? That's how some of those that's possible as well.
Sure. That could be something. I think the cutoff for a large capital project was something over $50,000. So that would be maybe creating an accessible trail where there isn't one now, or installing an accessible restroom where there isn't one now.
Thank you. Appreciate it. My other questions were already asked, but always.
Director, you got any questions?
So you said you get a lot of feedback from the residents, right? So do you know how many feedbacks a survey you get that, and then are you going to be implemented those in these projects?
Yes, so we didn't receive a high volume of survey responses. The qualitative information that we did get, the responses that we did get were, rich. We had about 10 respondents to the survey, despite the, distribution through the multiple newsletters. And the second part of your question, what was the second part of the question?
So are we just taking those surveys, whatever their suggestion in these kind of projects, we are just compiling those?
Yes, we can consider that. And so we asked questions about to try to get at those priorities of spaces, of preserves and things where we would consider improvements, getting at that, the public feedback in the implementation criteria that we use to consider in the development of the schedule. And then the full survey responses are included in the appendix, in the first appendix of the plan. So you can see the full responses. And then,
thank you.
Yeah.
Since they're robust.
Okay, I saw Director Kenneth.
Yes, hi. So I assume these are all physical visibility.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. No.
No?
No.
Give me an example of other.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Not specific, I'm just because everything I've heard so far has been physical barriers. Maybe that's an assumption.
I'm trying to think of a recommendation that wouldn't apply to a physical disability, but it's, but like the partners that we work with, it's both physical and developmental cognitive disabilities. And so how physical is applied is,
It's a difficult one because there's no simple physical barriers. There it is.
Right. Yeah.
I got two other fun questions.
okay, please.
One is, have you ever been approached, and you sort of addressed it when you asked. This question. I manage commercial properties. And we've been approached by the various extortionists. Online, you know what I'm talking about. Right, like Scott Wilson. Who started the whole process. They put him in jail, the IRS put him in jail, and then all of a sudden he disappeared. But but there's others out there like him, and they're taking it to the next step, which is, I worked with this with Senator there. And he calls them a drive-by. Because they don't always go in the facility, they just write you out. And now they have ClickBuy. And it's mainly aimed at restaurants and hotels. And if your website doesn't address ADA issues, they'll know. So have we ever been approached by those situations that have caused us to respond to an attorney?
Not that I'm aware of.
And then the last one is there's at least there used to be, at least for what I do. If there's a barrier that is absolutely unreasonable, you can bypass that. Do we have any of those anywhere that you're aware of?
Those would be evaluated according to the schedule in the plan. But it is something that we would consider, again, financial or other burden that would affect us from making, from those
Right,
barrier
it's like,
removals.
a two-story building without an elevator. You don't have to install the elevator. What do you think? It's really good. Well done.
I think Director Andrew was next. And then
First of all, I just wanna tell you the way that you produced the report, just flows very nicely. As soon as I thought of a question, you were answering it. Getting into detail a little bit more, looking at the exhibit G. And in particular, looking at survey response 5
Yes.
and steps.
Okay.
And I don't quite understand the difference between the contents.
Okay.
Of how they differ, because it seems like all the questions are the same, even though you might have gotten different. Those are one an organization's response, or individual.
All our individual responses from many respondents are associated with organizations, with local organizations.
So this is a consolidation.
Yes, I have one question that's come up by someone else who's coming to this facility. Is we have ADA compliant entrance into the entryway. But do we have the same automation in the class doors, the reception?
I don't believe we do, no.
So the question that was made was, those are heavy glass doors, although you can get into it. There's no way you just jump up and on reception know that you need to get in and talk to someone. No intercom, there's no bell. I didn't see it. I looked. we see that's something that's somewhat of a.
Sort of push buttons somewhere, then the door is open, that kind of things.
The doorbell.
Mhm, 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 mhm.
Kind of inexpensive.
Creative solutions, yeah.
Thank you. A very comprehensive report. And then you know, like I said before, I'm glad that you're being proactive about this because I've seen too many being reactive. And it's been a horrible process. I've seen businesses close. I've seen people drag through the mud. I know, you know, city council got some legislation passed a year ago, I want to say. On this.
I like to move to approve.
Through the chair, would you like to call for public comments?
Yes. Are there any members of the public that would like to make a comment on this item?
Any members who are joining us via Zoom, please raise your hand and I will unmute you. You're none.
Okay. All right, so now refresh my memory. We have a motion from Director Kenneth and a second from
Director, yeah.
Director Gill.
Director Kenneth,
Yes.
Director Flaher,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Annable, Director Alexander,
Yes.
Director Potter,
Yes.
Director Gill.
Yes.
Okay. That motion to adopt plan is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next item is approval of the annual appointment of treasurer and delegation of authority to invest funds in accordance with the authority's investment policy.
Good evening, directors. Lee Rauscher, completely forgot my title, Assistant General Manager, Administrative and Field Operations, and newly anointed ADA Coordinator. Thank you all very much. That was the other duties as assigned, right? Yeah. And we tried to think of a longer title for this particular item. The title, I think, is longer than the item itself. So we'll make this very brief for you tonight. Pardon me, the authority's board approved investment policy states that the board will appoint a treasurer prior to any investment decisions or transactions, and the treasurer's term will not exceed 1 year. So the current term of the treasurer will expire on October 13th, 2023, and that position is currently held by our fiscal services officer, who, as you may remember, is temporarily out on leave through about mid-February 2024. So our staff accountant, Elisa D'Angelo, is assuming several of the fiscal service officers, we love our long titles, critical duties during her absence, and has been working closely with Justina to manage our relationship with Chandler Asset Management, our investment advisors, as well as to monitor and review investment activity and prepare the necessary reports for management and the board review. With this temporary reassignment of duties, staff is requesting that the board appoint the staff accountant as treasurer with a term of approximately 4 months through February 29, 2024 to cover the fiscal service officer's absence. And then upon the fiscal services officer's return, staff will bring a new request before the board to appoint her for a term of 1 year. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'll open up to any public comments or anyone needing to address the board. No, okay. Any questions? Approval, Director Potter. Second from Director Flaher. I presume no other questions? It's pretty straightforward.
Very good. Thank you. And we'll be introducing Elisa D'Angelo to the board in a couple of months to present some reports. Thank you.
Okay, Director Kenneth,
Yes.
Director Flaher,
Yes.
Director Chapman,
Yes.
Director Annable, Director Alexander, Director Potter,
Yes.
Director Gill.
Yes.
All right, and that appointment passes unanimously. Now we are on to committee meeting summaries. Is there any update on the Citizens Advisory Committee?
The primary concern for the Citizen Advisory Committee last month was the difference between what staff had recommended and they had recommended and this was action. And do we record the BAC? So you might want to listen to it because there really were a lot of good comments about it. And I think that we're gonna need to do a better job of directing the staff in the beginning. And their primary concerns with how we reject something that we all totally agreed upon. How would you tell us that you can't do partial funding, but you did partial funding? So I think that we just need to get together as a body and look at some of the issues that came up this round and say, how can we, what do we really want to do in the future? And how do we communicate that with those staff and the experience? That's primarily.
All right. And an update from Youth and Management Committee. I guess you guys had a fun field trip.
We had a field trip today to Spina Farms with the CAC. Right, it was excellent.
And
We saw pumpkins, we saw flowers, we saw lots of corn stalks.
Dinosaurs.
And there are now 12 dinosaurs in Coyote Valley.
I was waiting for that part because we were talking about the.
And there are 3 pumpkins in my car.
Ah. Cool.
But we should encourage people to come during the week too. They said, yeah, like
Sunday is back.
really popular on the weekends, but then during the week, it's very quiet. But Alpha was not aware that all the pumpkins were grown across the way. So there truly are Coyote Valley pumpkins.
Long ground.
That's kind of worth promoting, right? Because we know agriculture is viable, the soil is good, there's a product of that great growing
See it
season.
right there.
Yeah,
And OSA is gonna have a presence there for whenever people come to see, they'll have a little booth.
You great big sign saying protected forever.
okay, great.
Right. Should name a dinosaur.
What's that?
Okay, thank you. So does staff want to comment any further on that or that's okay? All right. All right, next report we have general manager.
No report from me. Lucas, do you have anything you want to report this evening?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, just a quick update on the Rancho Cañada Bridge and Day Center project, which is currently under construction. We are well underway with construction. The new accessible loop trail is pretty much complete. It's just a little bit of cleanup now. It happened really quick. We started excavating last week. Found a little more water than we had anticipated in our geotechnical reports. It's been a very wet year. A tidbit of fact is our upstream stream gauge that we looked at for the historic data has, I think we went back 10 years and never shown any moving flows of water at this time of year. We still have a stream of water. So we're working with our engineering geotech team on some solutions to raise the abutments for the bridge up a little bit so we can get them formed and they don't wash away. So we have a solution for that. We've provided that to the contractor, and so hoping early next week we'll get back underway with the forming of those abutments. And then on Monday, we're actually going to have the bridge will be delivered to the site and be staged ready for creaning within the next few weeks here if all goes well. Yes, major photo opportunity agreement. So we'll be sure to document that well. That's all I have.
So meet the ADA requirements of course.
Yeah, so it's actually a great question. So as you'll notice with that project and Miami Atma and any projects moving forward, we'll be meeting the ADA requirements and really trying as best we can to provide more facilities. Sort of to answer your question about the physical, partly thinking about it a little more now. Things like plain text and the way we even English text or translations, those are, or tactile, those are all built into accessibility as well. And so striving to continuously, as Jennifer said, this is an ongoing process. Keep learning, keep trying new things. We've been in contact with other planners at other agencies, kind of doing the same thing, just learning. And so we're incorporating a lot of that work into all of our new projects. Rancho will have some similar facilities, accessible facilities as well. Long answer.
Is there any staff update? I know we're shrinking here. Legal counsel.
No report, Madam Chair.
Okay, board member reports. So we'll go this way. Director Kennan.
Probably the reason our general manager isn't here, because she's on her book tour after receiving the award from the Linda Lesser Award from the Farm Bureau, and she was presenting at the barbecue last night. And so it was a fun event. But anyway, she did real well. She just started the show. That's all.
Director Farr. Director Randall.
I don't have any details, but at the Farm Bureau event, nobody. Our supervisor was there and recognized, and I understand that staff is going to have a chance to with her, which is a very important connection. So glad I find this.
Great, thank you. I have no report. No report.
Also at the Farm Bureau event, it was gorgeous and I'm not sure if that's in our territory, but it looked pretty nice. And Andrew did a great job, so.
No report.
The OSAs.
Yeah, it's in the county.
Yeah.
Not in Yellow.
Yeah.
All right, that concludes the board member reports. At this point, announcement regarding closed session was made prior to closed sessions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are two items on closed session tonight. One is comments with the property negotiator. The second one is comments with legal counsel anticipated litigation. And that second item is related to the real property negotiations concerning the negotiating parties. So just for clarity. And the details are on the agenda.
Okay. All right, we will adjourn to closed session. All right,
Yeah, here.
all right. All right, we're back. Any reportable actions?
No reportable actions.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. We are adjourned.